Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I want to talk about the 2026 US Senate elections, and I specifically want to focus on the state of New Hampshire. Now, in the past few videos I've done a video on the state of Alaska and the state of Ohio, two currently Republican held Senate seats that Democrats are trying to pull off the upset and ultimately win. For today's video, I want to talk about the state of New Hampshire because Republicans are attempting to do the same thing, but essentially in reverse. So let me just make things clear here. For New Hampshire, this U.S. Senate race that's up is the Senate race currently held by Democratic U.S. Senator Jeanne Shaheen. Now, just to give you an idea here, Jeanne Shaheen, who is the longtime Democratic incumbent in the state of New Hampshire, won her last Senate race by over 50 points against the Republican candidate Bryant Corky Mesner. Now, the reason that Shaheen won by so large was, no disrespect to Mr. Mesner, he was not a very strong Republican candidate because no strong Republican candidates in the state of New Hampshire wanted to bother running against Shaheen because they know what everyone in New Hampshire really knows, which is that the Shaheen family is a political dynasty and she's a powerhouse of a candidate. 2026 is the first time that the Senate race is open in New Hampshire, and really since 2010, when it was Kelly Ayotte. She won her Senate race. In 2016, Kelly Ayotte lost a very close race in the Senate to Democratic Governor Maggie Hassan. Now, New Hampshire is a very interesting state because at the governor level, New Hampshire will elect governors that are Republicans rather frequently. It elected CHRIS SUNUNU governor every 2 years from 2016 through the 2022 election. And then in this past fall in 2024, or 2 years ago now, in 2024, it elected Kelly Ayotte the governor of the state of New Hampshire. So New Hampshire does not mind electing Republican governors, but on the Senate and House level, things tend to be differently. It has two Democratic senators, as I mentioned, in Maggie Hassan and Jeanne Shaheen. And for Congress, we can show the House elections from 2024, two Democratic representatives, the 2nd District, Maggie Goodlander, and the 1st District, CHRIS Pappas. Now, CHRIS Pappas is an important name to know for this video, as CHRIS Pappas is the leading Democrat running to replace Jeanne Shaheen in the New Hampshire U.S. Senate, race. Pappas has the endorsement of not only Pete Buttigieg and Maura Sullivan, but of Maggie Hassan and Jeanne Shaheen herself, along with Senators Amy Klobuchar and Mark Kelly. Also, on a side note, it's no coincidence that Pete Buttigieg, Mark Kelly, Amy Klobuchar are all really making endorsements in this race when obviously they're not from New Hampshire. Why do you think National Democrats are endorsing an early Democratic U.S. representative? They're getting their names in the granite state. They're going to tour the granite state before they run for president in 2028. But that being said, CHRIS Pappas has been a popular Democratic name in New Hampshire for the last really 10 years or so, since he ran for Congress for the first time and won, I believe, in 2016 for the first time. So Pappas is a popular Democrat and is going to be someone that's very tough to beat. But New Hampshire, at its nature, is a competitive state, but one at the federal level that leads towards the Democrats. The Democrats won both House races in 2024. They have control of both Senate races as of right now. And the 2024 election, Kamala Harris defeated Donald Trump in the state by 2.8%. Though I will say, New Hampshire voted more close to President Trump than I was expecting in 2024. Only roughly about 2.8% in a state that Trump really didn't campaign in the entire time was more competitive than I initially was anticipating in my final predictions. Kamala Harris got about 418,000 votes. Trump got about 395,000. Now, on Decision Desk HQ, it goes town by town in New Hampshire, showing how some of the major population areas like Concord and Manchester vote. But for this video, I think it makes more sense to show you the county by county breakdown of New Hampshire in 2024. Because when you go county by county, it looks a little bit more intriguing. First things first, all eyes are on Hillsborough County in any election when in New Hampshire, especially when it's gone by county. Hillsborough County almost accurately predicts the winner of the state and the margin almost every single time. Look at 2024. Harris wins it by 2.9%. She won statewide by 2.8. 2020, Joe Biden wins it by 7.7, wins the state, I believe, statewide by about 7.4. 2016, Hillary Clinton wins the state by 0.37. It goes to Trump by 0.2, only off by about 0.5%. So Hillsborough County, the margin of this county almost always seems to be right around that margin of what the final statewide result is. Now, Hillsborough County, Merrimack County, and Rockingham County, they make up the three most populous counties in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is not overall a very large state in population, but I would say it's more Rockingham County is the reddest of the three, Merrimack County is the bluest of the three, and then Hillsborough County is sort of the bellwether county that gives you the main indicator of how things are going. And the roadmap to winning this really goes through Hillsborough. And we can even look at the governor's race in 2024 as an example of this. Kelly Ayotte won by 9.3% statewide. She won Hillsborough County. And if you look at the margins in which she won Hillsborough County by, I bet we're going to see a pretty similar result to the final result here. Hillsborough County, she won it 54.48 to 43.45, roughly about an 11-point victory or so. Not too far off from her 9-point win statewide. So who wins Hillsborough County is a very strong chance at winning the election. And that is somewhere that I think JOHN SUNUNU knows. Now, Sununu, for his own right, whose name I haven't mentioned too much, he does have a history in the Granite State. He ran for re-election in 2008 against Democrat candidate, then governor, or former governor at the time, Jeanne Shaheen. Now, Shaheen won by 6.3%, 6 years after 2002 in the midterm elections, where JOHN SUNUNU won against Jeanne Shaheen. So he is someone that took on a political powerhouse that we now know Shaheen is, and won in 2002, and then ultimately lost in 2008. The one sort of cop-out you can give for Sununu is that 2008 was such a heavily Democratic year with the state of the country, President Bush's approval ratings, and the surge of Barack Obama, that it is hard for any Republican to really win anywhere across the country, let alone in New Hampshire. But Sununu still put up a pretty admirable fight, given the results of the race of about a 6-point win for Shaheen versus Sununu, considering she beat Corky Mesner by 16 points in 2020, an election that was less blue. So Sununu does not run for Senate again. There was rumors that he might have considered a run in 2014. He ultimately decides not to. Scott Brown, the former Massachusetts U.S. Senator, does decide to run in 2014. And what happens? A very close race, one that Shaheen ultimately wins by 3.2%. Scott Brown, just a few years prior, ran against Elizabeth Warren in 2012 in Massachusetts and lost by 7.5%. Now the question has to be asked. If it were Sununu and not Scott Brown, would Shaheen have lost this race? I'm not sure. I probably wouldn't bet on it because Shaheen still was very popular. Not as much now, but was popular back then as well. But could Sununu have made this race more competitive? Possibly. So why am I bringing this all up now? Well, because now the first Senate race for Jeanne Shaheen's seat that Jeanne Shaheen is not running in, former U.S. Senator JOHN SUNUNU decides he wants his old job back. He's running after a long hiatus of not running for president or running for Senate since 2008, and he's running against former 2014 Republican nominee Scott Brown. Now, the good news for Sununu is he essentially seems to have this primary on lock, leading by around 30 points in the most recent polling average. So now, with this primary essentially out of the way, we look towards the general. And make no mistake, yes, JOHN SUNUNU is the former U.S. Senator. The Sununu name is almost just as well known, if not as well known, as the Shaheen name in the state of New Hampshire. This race is in the advantage of the Democrats. Lean Democrat or tell Democrat across the board from all the political prediction websites. CHRIS Pappas versus John E. Sununu is off to a lead of 4.4% for Pappas. The best thing Sununu has going for him at this current point in time is there seems to be a lot of voters that are either undecided or are not committing to either candidate at this current point in time. In the three polling averages, when you average them all out together, Pappas gets about 46.7, Sununu gets 42.3, 11% are still up for grabs at this current point in time. The most recent poll from University of New Hampshire posts a pretty grim image for JOHN SUNUNU at 49 to 42. But the Emerson College poll before that, 45-43, is very good news for Sununu. The St. Anselm College poll shows it 46-43 with 11% undecided, giving Sununu a pathway to victory. It's certainly an uphill battle. It's one that the Democrats are going to be favored in, as New Hampshire is a state that at the governor level will vote red, but at the presidential, Senate, and House level tends to vote blue. It also doesn't help that Sununu is running for his former seat in the same election year, 2026, that is taking place during Donald Trump's second term, which when you look at President Trump's approval ratings here, let me find the tab here. Trump is currently disapproved of by roughly about 16 points in the national polling average from Decision Desk HQ. The Democrats are leading the generic ballot by roughly about 4.2%. If this election were taking place in 2024, maybe Sununu would have an even greater chance at winning this race. But the Democrats are certainly favored. But Sununu, having the last name Sununu and being elected statewide in New Hampshire, at very least gives him the ability to be competitive in a general election. And to be truthful and being objective here, I don't think Sununu is going to win. I think Pappas is going to win. But if Sununu runs better than expected, or even comes very close to winning in this race, then the next Senate race would be up in 2028 against Maggie Hassan. Maybe Sununu decides, I came so close in 2026, let's go against Hassan in 2028. If Hassan decides to run for election, maybe she decides to retire, another open race. Maybe it gives Sununu another chance. But again, 2028, I think, could be more of a better Democratic year than 2024 was. That could be a whole other issue for a different day. But for this race in particular, Sununu is running against Chris Pappas. Chris Pappas is a political force in his own right, but it is a different type of political force than running against Jeanne Shaheen. So can Sununu win this race? I think it's possible. There's enough undecided votes left out there, but for Sununu to win, he's going to have to do something very difficult in 2026, which is essentially break the national trend of this election and of the midterms, which is the Democrats are probably going to do very well nationwide in 2026, and JOHN SUNUNU will have to find a way to break that trend. The only way he can really do that, essentially, is riding off the popularity of his brother being the former governor of New Hampshire, the current governor, Kelly Ayotte, outperforming the expectations, winning probably right around like 12, 13 points or so, and Sununu having enough of that popularity on his own. The fact that this race is only a 4-point lead for Chris Pappas, though, is honestly good news for Sununu in a Democratic midterm year where Democrats are pretty much winning every single Senate race. But can Sununu win? He's going to have to look at that 2024 presidential map and say, okay, can we find a way to win Hillsborough County, and can we find a way to bring down the margins in Cheshire County, in Merrimack County, and Stratford County, while also gaining in Rockingham County as well? That's going to be the question for Sununu. Now, for the 2026 Senate map, I showed you the map right now. It's 53 Republican, 47 Democrat. In the election prediction video that I just did a few days ago, I had the Republicans favored in 51 Senate seats, Democrats favored in 49. Now, there are some really close calls on this map. Alaska almost flips for Mary Peltola in this prediction, and if it does, it's a 50-50 Senate. If Ohio or Iowa then from there flips the Democrats, it's 51-49. So Republicans are in a really tough position right now because it's looking like, based on the current polling, that Republicans could lose North Carolina and Maine. And if they do that, they're really playing defense already, but then they're extra playing defense in Ohio, Iowa, and Alaska. And in Texas also, mind you. The Republicans, if they lose the state of Georgia and the state of Michigan, those are their top two pickup opportunities. The Republicans are essentially over in terms of trying to keep the Senate. If they lose those two pickup opportunities, lose North Carolina and Maine, and then are about to lose Alaska or Ohio, Republicans are kind of done. New Hampshire, at very least, is probably going to go to the Democrats, but it gives the Republicans a rare potential pickup opportunity in 2026. And given the polling data for Georgia, it may not be too far of a stretch to say Republicans have a better chance at winning in New Hampshire than they do at winning in Georgia. Despite the fact that Georgia voted for President Trump in 2024 and New Hampshire did not, Sununu is giving the Republicans a very strong candidate in the state of New Hampshire that the Republicans just don't have in the state of Georgia right now. In Michigan, Mike Rogers has a very strong chance at winning that Senate race, but he couldn't win in 2024 with President Trump at the top of the ticket helping him out. Is he going to do any better in 2026 in a more Democratic-friendly election environment? I personally would bet against that. Sununu, at very least, the expectations of him winning that race are probably not that great in New Hampshire. I think most political pundits would expect New Hampshire to go blue. But Sununu, being the name Sununu and being the former senator, knows the state and gives the Republicans a strong candidate they can at least rally behind. So that's really the long story short of the video. Do I think Sununu is going to win New Hampshire at the end of the day? No. But do I think he has the potential to make it really competitive, where if the winds shift for 2026, that it could become competitive, that he can maybe eke out a victory if things are much different now than they are today? That you have to leave at least a possibility out there for. I'm interested to hear what you think. Leave all your thoughts in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did, and I hope to see you in a future video.